So is moderator here? Yes. Yes. I'm here so we can start. Everything's ready. You can now open the panel for discussion. Yes, thank you. The next session is entitled Media Literacy and Role of Various Stakeholders and Sectors in this process. Marika Sikharulice, Scientific Programs Chief, Mrs. Susan Filcher, Doctor, Chief of Digital Services, International Telecommunications Union, Maka Makhatadze, ICEP Academy Georgia, Soko Falavadze, Chief of ICT Unit, Ministry of Economy, Sviat Gabi Sonia, Business and Technologies Technology University, Research Center Director, Georgi Tsimindia, Regional Development Coordinator, Economic Diversification. So hello everyone. And my first question goes to Marika Sikharulice, Teachers Professional Association ICT Program Manager. Can you tell us about the challenges in the situation? Things have changed, been changed a lot by the coronavirus. The education process has moved into the online realm, which brought about new challenges. Greetings everyone, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. This is going to be an interesting panel as well, like the previous panels. And I agree with you that the pandemic has brought about a number of challenges. First of all, for the NHS. NHS and education have been on the front line of the frontline spheres that received the most number of challenges. We generally try to certainly raise awareness, teachers' awareness of how to use digital technologies. And even though we've been carrying out those educational activities even before, it turned out that we still were not prepared well. Some of the training courses, online training courses, were also had been provided also before the pandemic, and everybody welcomed the online realm, but only 5 or 10% would actually go for the digital solutions before the pandemic. That's the situation before the pandemic. The Georgian Ministry of Education and Science has an official license to use Microsoft products. The Ministry of Education offered the Microsoft Teams platform to the students and pupils. And it turned out that we first moved on to use Teams. It turned out that only about 5,000 people were using the Teams platform. And the first we ended the first stage of lockdown with more than 15,000 using Teams, but so it was all mass. I'll say a mass in the beginning, but then we somehow got accustomed, and so our approach became more structured. We offered tailored trainings to pedagogues or teachers, but also to parents and students. This is what we did to catch up with cope with the crisis. But now the situation has changed completely. Both teachers and students know very well how to use the new technologies, how to use the online technologies for education purposes. they're taking school classes remotely. Now, all the three, I would say, beneficiaries, teachers, parents, and students, are all well skilled. This is what broke the camel's back. You see, so when the parents engaged in the process. Sandro, I can't hear you. Yes, yes, indeed. Parents found themselves attending the classes of their children, and it turned out that they could basically, sit down during the lessons, and they were able to learn first and teach their children. I'd like to move on to Mrs. Susan Telcher, and Mrs. Susan, could you please tell us what challenges do you see in terms of media literacy? I would also recall my friend's post, which he or she posted several years ago. And here she said, you didn't want journalists prepared information. Now you start to learn how to discern, true information from false information. Now it's your job to do. So from journalists, I'd say, from media, it has moved down to each and every individual. So where do you see where the media? Where do you see the media source? Where's the media, and how to say the challenges you see in this regard? Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Sandro. I can hear an echo. Okay, it's okay now. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody from the ITU headquarters in Geneva. It's my great pleasure to be part of this Georgia ITF panel on digital literacy and skills. And this topic has been receiving more and more attention over the past few years. This was even more prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We just heard about it in terms of the education sector. So coming from a UN organization, I would like to address this topic from three different angles, or make three different points here. First, I want to talk a little bit in general of why it's so important to address the topic of digital skills and literacy, globally, regionally, and nationally. My second point is that I want to look at what are the challenges that governments and other stakeholders are facing in addressing the digital skills topic. And third, I'll share with you very briefly of how ITU supports governments in this process. So let me start with my first point. Why is it so important to address the topic of digital skills more broadly in the population, and what are the opportunities and challenges related to that? So first of all, globally speaking, there is a growing digital skills gap in the labor market. In other words, the demand for digitally skilled workers is exceeding the supply, and that gap is growing. It also means that there are huge opportunities for those with the right digital skills. Let me give you some examples. For example, in the European Union, it was estimated that 1 million new jobs would be created by 2030, and 60 million new jobs worldwide in the next 5 years as a result of the digital transition and also the green transitions. Yet we have huge gaps when it comes to the levels of digital skills across Europe, although this varies significantly from country to country. For example, in the Nordic countries, they are featuring best, with about 10 to 15% of the population having advanced digital skills, and over 50% standard and basic digital skills. At the other end of the scale, in countries like Bulgaria, also Georgia, Romania, and Albania, less than 20% of the population have standard digital skills. So the EU DESI, the DESI index, which is the Digital Economy and Society Index, shows that 4 out of 10 adults and every third person who works in Europe lacks basic digital skills. This gap already existed before the pandemic broke out across the world. This is not just a European issue. And then came COVID. And then according to the ILO, during the COVID pandemic, employment in the ICT related industries experienced the highest growth. We all know that the pandemic accelerated the move to digital in education, in all the fields. New digital tools, new solutions, new platforms, services, they have been mushrooming during the pandemic, and they will continue to be applied, and others will appear even whenever we move out of the pandemic, hopefully soon. With this trend, the demand for digitally skilled population and workforce will continue to increase. So another point I wanted to also mention when it comes to the importance of digital skills is linked to the digital divide. Digital skills are not only critical to finding or keeping jobs, they are also critical to closing the digital divide. There is still a big digital divide. Almost 40% of the global population are still not using the internet. The large majority of those in developing countries. But consider this, there is a persistent internet user gap, which is the gap between people that have theoretically access to the internet or to a broadband connection, but are actually not using it. And that gap is globally now around 30%. And this gap is mostly explained by education and skills and literacy. According to surveys that have been done, household surveys in different developing regions, one of the main barriers to internet uptake in developing countries is the lack of capacity and skills of people to use the internet and take advantage of it. About 2/3 of answers are related to this reason. So the digital divide is increasingly becoming a reflection of existing skills and education divides among populations. And it's often the marginalized groups, including women and girls, the elderly people who are less digitally skilled. So if we strengthen digital skills, we also narrow the digital divide and increase internet use. Now, let me move to a second point I wanted to make. What are the challenges that governments and other stakeholders are facing in addressing the skills? First of all, the skills gap is often not exactly known. The demand from the employers is there, the job offerings are there, the education sector is putting a lot of focus on including new technologies in the school curricula, but a much more detailed analysis is required to find out where are the skills gaps in the population and what needs to be done to address them. Such an analysis is required at the country level, at the industry, at the sector level, and also at sub-regions within countries. So it's very important for countries to undertake such skills assessment. That should include different stakeholders, government, public sector organizations, different industry sectors, educational institutions, technical, vocational training entities, local communities, etc. Another challenge is that skills are needed at very different levels. At basic literacy levels, including media and information literacy, which was the topic of the previous session as well, and this one, but online safety and security as well, but also basic software skills, they are now needed for almost all jobs. And at the professional level, there's huge demand for people with skills related to the new and emerging technologies, Internet of Things, mobile technologies like 5G, artificial intelligence, most importantly, cybersecurity skills. This is probably the number one area where employers feel that there is the biggest skills gap in cybersecurity experts. So all of these need to be addressed, and that's a big challenge. And of course, there's a lot of investment required to address the skills gap, investments in the education sector, in infrastructure, in training interventions, in upskilling, in reskilling. So companies need to invest in their HR. So my final point is I would like to share with you a little bit about how ITU supports governments in this process. We have a number of programs and initiatives through which we contribute towards building digital capacity in our member countries. Let me just focus on two of them. First is on training delivery. The ITU Academy is the main ITU e-learning platform. It offers more than 100 training courses every year, covering a large variety of ICT-related topics. These courses are delivered by ITU or one of its many training delivery partners, notably our centers of excellence, with 5 of them also in Europe. Second, country assistance. For example, we support governments in carrying out digital skills assessments as an input to their national digital skills strategy development. Here we can help with concrete tools. For example, last year we published our digital skills assessment guidebook. The objective of this guidebook is to help governments assess skill supply and demand, determine the skills gap. It includes also existing skills frameworks that can be applied by governments, and it's available in all the 6 UN languages. The focus of this work is on the national level. We have started to work with a few countries in Europe in the implementation of skills assessments, such as Ukraine, Albania, North Macedonia. Work is also underway here in Georgia through our regional office for Europe. We assisted in carrying out a national assessment on the ICT ecosystem, which helped to identify existing capacity and skills gap that need to be addressed moving forward, for example, in the field of artificial intelligence. So we are very excited about this ongoing collaboration here in Georgia and in other countries, and we look forward to further deepen it. Let me stop here at this point, and I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up. Thank you very much.
დიდი მადლობა. მინდა სიტყვა გადავცე სოფო თვალავაძეს.
Many thanks. And I will now give the floor to Sofia Twalavadze to discuss what the situation is in Georgia in that regard. What are the perspectives?
Okay, thank you very much, Sandro. I would like to welcome you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this 7th forum of the Internet governance. And I also would like to welcome the organizers. You know that we have the hybrid model today of this forum. I would like to thank to the Association, Telecommunication Association, for organizing and each and every supporter of this event. The information and communication technologies are the rapidly growing the field that is the era of the digitalization, and it plays very important role in forming the global agenda. And Ms. Susan, quite in a very detailed manner, talked about it, how important it is for the modern human being, for the developing its style of life, etc. Adaptation in the digital field is not so easy, but of course it is vitally important to develop it. So one of the priority of the government of Georgia, as well as the changing, is the sustainable development of the communication field. In order to achieve this goal is the digital literacy, development of the digital literacy in our country. Here I would like to mention and go back to the question which you have raised here, Sandra. What is Georgia's reality? What we have with regard of the policy development? We know that in January 10, 2020, we already approved the 2020-2025 national strategy for the broadband system development. It also has one of the strategic goals, the skills as well as the competencies to be developed for the digitalization, as well as the digital literacy campaigns for the different type of the educational activities, etc., including the security issues, safety issues in online participation of the youth and the minors in the internet. We already started Log in Georgia project, and its major goal is just to have the fast speed internet accessible for the population, but at the same time, we need to use, we need to encourage its application through training, awareness raising, and other educational activities. For this purpose, we have one important project that is about the internet as well as the safe use of internet. The ministry and the communication as well as the negotiations, and that you, the experts of the prepare the report on the recommendations for the safety and security issues. And now we've been working on the action plan for the online security. It will be oriented on the world practice. I mean, the best practice sharing, including the legal as well as institutional framework development. Also the center and the hotline for the internet will be discussed within this frame. I would like to thank Susan for the very close cooperation with our ministry. Through their support, we have implemented many very fruitful projects in Georgia. And today, Susan is together with us in this very special event. And I do hope that her intervention was very interesting, specifically when it comes to the digital books. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Maka Mahatadze. You know that your educational center has the meetings with the youngsters. What is the situation? What type of students you have? Whether they are ready for this type of the development? Whether they understand what is the digital book? Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. I would like to say that the door of our academy is open for each and every stakeholder. We do not have any filter, any testing. They just to leave out of the board somebody. Of course not. Those who would like to learn this profession, to find themselves, we are ready to help because many of them have no idea where we are going to. I mean, the future world. Unfortunately, today the situation is not commendable because 70% of the students have no digital literacy at all. Therefore, we were forced just to introduce the European standards and thanks to our headquarter to adapt those trainings for the beginners and at the initial stage we are providing the basic trainings. Some of them have no skills at all. Even they do not know how to work with the cloud system or even at the user level. So that's why we sometimes are facing very big Chinese wall. So yeah, of course, we probably need more contribution from the side of the state. The state shall elaborate some policy on the basis of which we would be able just to raise the literacy. I mean, the digital book literacy. And Susan also mentioned about it. So it is about the advanced skills within the, let's say, competencies, development of the competencies, development of the skills. That is very important in order to have the mass coverage among the society. And when it comes to the force, the industrial revolution, and we speak about the development of the System 5.0, it requires, let's say, the different readiness among the population. And I mean, not a 20% of the population, but 90% of the population must be ready. So you, Marika, Susan, and many other good experts together can provide the assistance to the state and to develop some concept how to guide the people step by step to this result. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Sviat Gabisonia. You work at the Business and Technology University at the Research Center. He is the director, and I would like to ask him to speak about their center. Hello, Sandro. I would like to continue Marcus, the approach. Yes, we are facing the big challenges because the most important problem which we found on the way of the distance learning, etc., that was also related to the digital books. It is about retraining of the teachers and professors themselves, because if we put some, let's say, age line, the elder professors found more challenges and more problems. Another problem was that the scientific literature, research, documentation, etc., they were not digitalized. And the literature that was used for teaching the students was not adapted or for the distance learning. You know that it's a third semester. The most of the students have the distance learning, but now we have better situation than in the beginning, because the literature went through the digitalization process. In the part of the research and the sciences, situation is even more difficult, because you know that in addition to the technical sciences, we have also the other type of the subjects, and not all of them are obedient to the digitalization. The BTU, Business and Technological University, more or less managed with this issue successfully, because we also before they started the digitalization. Today, the big part of the sciences continue in the distance regime, but the medicine and some other of the fields still remain either in the offline regime or they're using the hybrid approach. We think that in the part of the higher education, in the post-pandemic situation, it will be facing absolutely new reality. Therefore, it may require legislative changes, because the universities will see the necessity to legalize the form of distance learning, even after pandemic. And you know that we do not have it identified at the level of legislation. We do hope that it is possible to have both the master's courses as well as the bachelor's courses to have the distance learning. So these are the major topics I wanted to be referred with this short period of time. You know that the problems are many and multifold. Thank you, thank you. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Georgi Semintia, the coordinator of the regional development programs with regard of the economic diversification. Mr. Georgi, I'm sorry I cannot hear Mr. Georgi's voice. Some problem with internet. No voice from Georgi Sementia. There are some technical problems. Maybe now we can go to the questions. Yeah? The first question which I can see there, that is ICT, the software, when it would be possible at school to learn the software design. I also would like to respond. You know, in the 5th and 6th grade, it was introduced. And from September, it is also already obligatory from the second year. But the upper classes have been changed, updated, and we have the issues like the algorithm, the learning, visual, the software design. Of course, we cannot introduce the difficult software languages. We cannot ask them, but some basic concepts are being introduced. It's a pilot project in schools, and maybe, yeah, maybe we will extend these programs. So this program is in progress already from the second year up to the sixth one. It is already an obligatory subject. If there are more questions to the participants, are there questions? Any questions? In each and every school, both the public schools as well as in the private schools, we introduce new standard from the second year up to the sixth year. So next question is, what was the failure of the Ministry of Education during the pandemic? Maybe it's a question to Maka Makatadze or Mr. Zviad, also Marika Sikharulidze. I don't know. Maybe you, Mr. Zviad, you was the last one. Maybe we start from the higher education. Yes, the challenge is quite big because you know that the module of the education, they also includes the estimation of some the social elements. And for the lecturer, it is not easy to look at the screen during the lecture, especially when the students are turning off cameras. And there is a big problem of the communication. Another is the technical problem. When the lecturer explains the topic and any technical problem may interrupt him, may disrupt his or her mobilization. In this part, we are facing some of the problems. So another problem, the problem of literature. It was found that biggest part of the literature was not digitalized. We have introduced the digital books only of the recent year, so they are uploaded on the website which were in fact the financed or funded by the donor organizations. And as far as I remember, all the professors allowed the libraries to scan them and to copy them. And the last one, it is a phase of the examination, which is also very sensitive because we do not have testing regime at all, because it is not possible just to examine, because they can copy down from the books. That's why we introduce quiz system as well as the case study system. Therefore, the checking of the knowledge is another problem. Okay, Maka, please. You know, we did not have the technical problems because you know that we introduced different type of these systems, including LMS, quiz, examination system. But here we are facing different the problem. That is the flexible skills, where the students have no skills for the self-management, self-development, and before pandemic, we also wanted just to introduce sort of the flipper classroom, but here we are facing the problem. the students from the meeting to the meeting, they do not prepare themselves, and still they hope that whatever is introduced by the lecturer, they have to take only that knowledge and do not work on themselves. That is the problem. No self-education. Another is again about the virtual collaboration. It is also about the flexible skills. They don't know how to build up the virtual communication. With the professors, we didn't have the problem because they are relatively younger, up to 30 years, and the subjects also are related to the technologies. Yeah, that's why we speak here about the flexible skills. Yeah, so performance-based soft skills, etc., which are very important for the other universities. They need to think about it, maybe from the different angle. And Marika Sikharulidze, when it comes to the general education, we more or less addressed this issue. From the beginning, it was not easy. However, we found the consensus where the teachers and students meet each other and how technically we could solve this problem. However, still we have the remaining the problems. It is the pedagogical part of the distance learning methodology, how to teach it, etc. Didactics, what type of means and tools exist just to transfer the knowledge using the distance learning. We've been working during the entire year just to set up this type of the resources. We do hope that within the strategy 2022 we would be able to introduce. It is also quite difficult to have the specific gadgets, devices in the families, in the households, and even one gadget is there, and they have three children. What should be done? How the family can divide it among three children? Yeah? One is the quality in the mountain area, in the remote area, etc. But on the other hand, this is a number of gadgets and some other technological devices in order to have the equal access as well as equal involvement of the family members. And maybe we need to think about it. All of the stakeholders are here, and maybe they have already the answer how to resolve this problem. Here is the replica, and maybe they say that maybe we need some hybrid electronic teaching for the higher educational institutions. Do we have the data? How the activities increase the access to the internet? Maybe it is a question to Ms. Sopotvalavadze, please. Yes. In the previous panels, the participants talked about this issue. You know that within the Login Georgia project, we have the OpenNet. It's specifically for the rural area as well as for the mountain area. And now Guria region is already connected and they have quite a good quality. So when it comes to the coverage, we are doing our best. Now about schools, we've heard the interventions of other panelists. Yes, the schools are well covered. So for the children, yeah, it is possible. It is possible to consider it as a positive one. Thank you very much. Next question is, when it comes to the problem of mountain area and the teachers have the problem, who is responsible for solving this type of the problem? So we had the representatives from the management bodies. They have the hotline. You can connect with them. Sandro, in the mountain area, we still have this problem. Yeah, in some of the places there are low quality communication, or in some places we do not have it at all. So if you think that you need some assistance, if there is no communication, it is interrupted, you have to get in touch with that center. The next question is about the situation at schools. Yeah, situation is not equal. There are some schools which are quite well supplied with the computers, but the schools where they have a very few students, they are not well equipped. In some of the schools, we have even more teachers rather than the students, and it is not so easy, when it comes to the smaller schools. Sandro, maybe we need to add here that the books are also given to the children, and maybe the parents do their best to, let's say, use them in their everyday life. You know, we are very special with regard of this type of the approach, because each and every the first grade student at school is given to the computer, and they can learn it, and it is a gift, so-called book. And the last question, and we don't have more time. So work in Georgia doesn't take into account the last or the final consumer. In the rural area, there is not the fixed internet. No one knows about the quality. Okay, Mr. Sandro, but the author of the question already heard the answer from the side of the ministry as well as from the regulating commission. So both of the offices work in this direction in order to solve this problem. And the problem is quite widely known, and very serious work is in progress now. Let me add that still the problem is to pave the way, or the, let's say, road for the cable. If there is no cable, it is really very difficult. If the cable is there, something is possible to be done, and it is a lesser problem rather than the absence of the cable at all. And the author of the comment also asks about the development of the smaller telecom operators in order not to have lobbying there from the side of the bigger providers. Yeah. Yeah, as I already mentioned, it would be the last question because we are behind of our agenda. I would like to thank all participants of this panel. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sandro, thank you very much indeed. No, please don't say goodbye, because we have one reporter who has to summarize. Yeah, we are here. We are here. I just try to not to abuse our time. I think we managed to confine ourselves in the time.
მიკროფონი აქვს გამორთული.
თქვენ გაქვთ მიკროფონი გამორთული?
ზუმის მიკროფონია გამორთული.
ისევ გამორთულია. გამორთულია ისევ, მიკროფონი ისევ გამორთულია. რაღაცას აჭერს ხელს. There was a problem of the microphone, so they would like to ask the reporter to summarize, to sum up specifically the major challenges for the, who is the reporter? Teona. Teona. Teona says that she's here. Welcome everybody. My name is Teona Dorashvili. Very briefly, let me tell you about the different directions, of course, based on our speakers. First of all, I would like to start with the school problems. It has been mentioned from the very beginning that the problems they had when they just started using the distance learning. But now the problem is this methodology of teaching, how effectively to deliver the subject, the content, etc., to the students. Another problem was the technical, the supply and provision of the schools in the capital city. It is much better rather than in the regions. The next is about the different shortage in devices in the family, but one solution is a so-called book which is given to the first year students at school. Quite often we can hear some complaint from the side of the family with regard of the gadgets and devices, their quality, their absence and lack. Also, the speakers talked here about the professors, their readiness, about the digitalization of the literature, about the research which should be put also in the online regime. And therefore, here we can speak about the pandemic situation to consider the possibility of the legislative changes, introduction of the special things in the curricula, in the master's course, in the bachelor's course, etc. So, when it comes to the changes of the digital skills and the competencies, yes, of course, the young children are getting the skills. However, we have the problem with regard of the self-management, and this type of the lack of the self-management is the barrier. And when it comes to the panelists, they all talked about the role of the state as well as the skills and the competencies, its development, and the representative of the ministry itself talked about it. And here we underlined the situation existing today in our country, as well as the ongoing projects, also some skills and competencies within the digital sphere. They plan to elaborate the new strategy. State does its best in order to plan good measures to help to the population, of course, in general, and specifically to within the field of the education. And finally, I would like to tell you that based on the intervention of our panelists, as these problems are not unique only for Georgia, and it was also mentioned that it's quite clear that problems exist in Europe with regard of the digital inequality within the skills. It has been mentioned that Nordic countries are better prepared, and the problems are in the countries like Georgia. However, we found very good findings here, which is first of all about the eradication of the digital inequality. But on the one hand, we do not have this problem, but we have the problem with regard of the digital literacy, and the people may have the access, but due to the lack of the knowledge and the literacy, they do not use the new technologies. Here we need to pay attention with the special focuses on the children and as well as on the elders. And finally, let me summarize it is really important on the one hand from the side of the state to take care of the development of the infrastructure, but on the other hand, when it comes to the digital the skills, it is very important to underline what type of skills we need to be developed. Would it be the media? Would it be the security and safety issues? Would it be, for instance, new technologies, etc., etc.? So first and foremost, we need the specific studies with regard of the digital skills and competencies, and then based on them we need to develop the educational curricula, and it must be done through the involvement of the state agencies, NGOs, etc., and wider society. Mr. Sandro, please finish.
Thanks for the summary. And once again, I'd like to thank all the panelists. And many thanks to the listeners for your attentive listening. Many thanks on our side for your participation and for a successful panel. We'll take a break, a technical break for 5 minutes, and then we'll get on to the next session on cybersecurity, issues of cybersecurity at the request of one of the panelists. We will not be streaming live Facebook and YouTube live. So if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please switch to Zoom. There's a link on the web page, and you can watch live today's session. So you cannot watch this final session in YouTube or on Facebook. You should move to a live Zoom stream.